This old lady rubbed garlic on her finger, then dip it in a little oil, and put it in the hot water. Boil it in hot water for 5 minutes, and then take it out. Then she wrapped it with a bandage. After a few days, the old lady opened the bandage. The finger became even uglier. This made the old lady desperate and miserable. It was last Friday. The old woman was singing outside. The king heard her singing. The king was instantly enchanted. The king was about to look over his shoulder when the old woman had already run back to her home. But this made the king think that this woman was something else. So when he returned to the castle, he immediately sent his men to deliver a jeweled necklace. The old woman was delighted to receive the necklace. She took it around her neck. She looked at herself in her eyes. It was like he was 18 years old again. But then his sister told her to give the necklace back, and said to stop daydreaming. But the old lady felt this was the only chance to change her fate. She had to take this chance. At night the king came to her door. He was ready to see the beauty. The king saw no response from inside, so he shouted at the door. Then the old woman rushed to explain.
I'm just a poor girl. I don't deserve the honor you bestow on me.
Her beautiful voice. The king's desire grew stronger and stronger. Then the old woman said, the day after tomorrow, at the same time, you will do it again. I'll show you one of my fingers first. And so the old woman, using superstitious methods, she was ready to make her hand look like she was 18 years old. The king was on time for his appointment in the evening. But at this point the old woman, she didn't know what to do. The king was charmed by the old woman's voice. He thought she was a young and beautiful woman. That night the king came to the old woman's door for an appointment. It turned out that just yesterday, the king came to the old lady's door at the same time. He came to the old woman's door. That night the old woman said, come at this time tomorrow. I'll show you a finger. But the old woman was afraid to hold it out today. So she put out her own sister's finger. The king looked at the 18-year-old's finger. His desire was overwhelming. He decided it must be a beautiful woman. Then the king invited the old woman to see the stars at the castle tomorrow. The old lady agreed in a heartbeat, but with one small request, that when she went, that all the lights must be turned off. In order to see the stars, the king agreed readily. Then the old lady asked her sister, why are your fingers so tender? It turned out that my sister had been licking her fingers. That's why my sister's fingers were so tender. The next day the king's men brought the old woman into the castle. She was wrapped up in her own clothes. The king turned off all the lights, as he had promised. And so they watched the stars all night. And the king woke up to find an old woman. The king almost had a heart attack. Then the old woman was thrown from the castle. She was caught by a tree branch. The old woman survived. Just then a witch found the old woman, and a riddle was thrown at her. The king spends a night with a beautiful woman. And the king woke up to find an old woman. This almost gave the king a heart attack. Then the old woman was thrown from the castle. She was caught by a tree branch. The old woman survived. Just then a witch found the old woman, and then a witch found the old woman, and spoke to her in riddles. The next day the king was out hunting. He found a beautiful woman, and he fell in love with her. And so it was. The next day she became a queen. But what he didn't know was, the beauty was actually an old lady. And then they prepared for their wedding. The old lady had her men send a dress to her sister. She hoped that her sister would attend her wedding as promised. The wedding day went very well, but the sister was jealous of her. He asked her how she got younger. The old lady blurted out, the man who killed the pig next door gave me a new skin. He didn't even know how she got it. Once out of the castle, the sister found the man who killed the pig, and gave him a necklace. She asked him to change her skin. Then the boss took him into the woods. Then he tied him to a tree. To become beautiful he was no longer afraid. Instead, he was looking forward to his future, and he walked to the castle with his skin intact. And then he collapsed on the road. The next day the old woman found her skin was returning to its original form. She ran away from the castle to avoid being discovered. She was never seen again. And that was the end of the film. He didn't know that the witch's magic actually has an expiry date. This tells us that looks have an expiry date. Hoping he'll last forever. It's an obsession, wanting to keep it forever. Dream on.